So I'd like to do question 11 in your homework on confidence intervals for the population proportion. This again is section 6.3. So the figure shows the results of a survey in which 1,018 adults from country A, 1,023 adults from country B, 1,010 adults from country C, 1,024 adults from country D, 1,016 adults from country E were asked whether national identity is strongly tied to birthplace. So we have this chart here, national identity and birthplace. People from different countries who believe national identity is strongly tied to birthplace. So construct a 95% interval for the population proportion of adults who say national identity is strongly tied to birthplace for each country. So country A, we have 30% of the population says yes. So what we want to do though is how confident are we with our, so this is from the sample though. So if we look up here for country A, 1,018 adults were surveyed. So that doesn't represent the whole country. This is just a sampling of the population. So what we're trying to figure out is how confident are we with respect to the population? And so what we want to do is create a confidence interval of what percent that's going to fall in. Now remember, to do our population proportion confidence interval, we need to know the number of successes. Notice how they gave us the actual sample statistic. We still need to actually go back a step and determine what X is. So notice how really what we have is, X over N is equal to the P hat, if you will. So really, we don't know what X is. They gave us the sample size is this 1018, and they gave us the P hat, which is this 30%. So we've learned that, 30% times this 1018 would actually give us our number of people who actually believe that their national identity is tied to the birthplace. So if we put that into the calculator, 0.30 times this 1018, so we get 305.4. So if we play this out now, we can create our confidence interval using our calculator. So if I go to stat, go to test, we go to alpha A. I'm kind of curious about this 305.4. Usually, we're talking about a number, like a whole number. So I'm kind of curious to see if we'll get an error here if we just put the decimal in. I'm thinking we'll get an error. So if we do 305.4 as the number of successes, that sounds weird. So if we put the 1018 there, we calculate, notice we do get an error. So it does want us to actually enter a whole number in for that. So, I think rounding wise, I think it doesn't really matter. I think you could round up or round down in this because I think your calculator, your homework actually gives you a little bit of flexibility there. So my instincts would be to round down. So hit stat, test. If I go down there and again, this go 305 and come back through there again. So that's how I get 0.2 0.71 to 0.328. That would be my confidence interval. So notice how my sample population was 30%. Notice how it does fall in this interval. What we're also saying is I'm 90% confident. I'm sorry, I'm 95% confident that the population proportion falls within this interval as well. Now, what I'm kind of curious also is if I just put, say, 306 in there, see how much it actually affects our data. So 0.272 and 0.329. So it changes it basically by a thousandth of a decimal. So I don't know if that will impact your answers in my lab. I don't think it will. So I think there's some wiggle room in these questions here on my lab. So feel free to round up or round down. I think you'll be just fine on those. If we do another example here uh, on this, you kind of see the pattern here. Country B, basically what I need to do is figure out what the number of people who actually believe national identity ties in the birthplace. In those country B, again, not a whole lot of people, well, there's some, but it's not a majority of the people believe that. So 22% of the people believe that nationality is tied into the birthplace. And how many people were surveyed in country B? It looks like 1,023 people were surveyed in country B. So notice that each country, we had a pretty close amount of surveys there. So that would be 1,023. So if we do this math here, so this 22% times then this 1023, we're going to get this 225 basically. So that's going to be our X, if you will. That's how many people actually out of the 1,025, 225 believed national identity ties into birthplace. So again, it depends on, for me, I've been born and raised in Kentucky, so I haven't really traveled a whole lot. But if you are somebody who's traveled a whole lot, you may not have a whole lot of strong connections to where you were born. So really, it's all about your experiences for some folks. So if I go ahead and play this out here, stat test alpha A. This now will change to 225. And then this would be, looks like this time 1,023 people were surveyed. Confidence level didn't change. So notice how, again, we're getting right there, that 22% was that p hat. That's kind of what we got there, that 22% still there. Notice that our confidence interval is going to be this point, if we go 3 decimal places, 0.195 to 0.245. So what we're saying is, our sample proportion falls between this interval. But what we're also saying is we're 95% confident that the population proportion is going to fall between these two percentages. So that's kind of what this confidence interval is kind of saying overall for the population. So I'm not really going to do the rest of these. It's basically the same type of math that goes through here. But notice, if you look at the data, it looks like country D, there looks like there's a lot more people who are that identify with national identity, where country E, not as many people identify with national identity tied to birthplace. So it's kind of where you're from on this. So that's a big part of how culture works, is you have to really tie into, people's different experiences. So I'll leave it at that. And I'll stop there.